Following the national security law for Hong Kong's implementation on June 30, its deterrent effect has seen immediate results. People from around the world expect Hong Kong to quickly return to its previous stability and its residents to live peacefully. However, certain politicians and international media are still holding double standards. They chastise China for safeguarding the security of its own land. Every sovereign country takes national security as one of its core interests. In Europe and the US, their respective national security laws are strictly enforced. In October 2017, Spain's Catalonia autonomous region held an independence referendum in defiance of the Constitutional Court's prohibition. At the end of the month, Spain's central government announced it would suspend Catalonia's autonomy and close down its regional government and parliament soon after the referendum's conclusion. The Spanish Attorney General charged the former officials of Catalonia with sedition and embezzlement. On October 14, 2019, the Supreme Court of Spain convicted 9 separatist leaders to 9 to 13 years in jail. Of those 9 included Catalonia's former vice president, Oriol Junqueras, who was charged with sedition and embezzlement. The region's former parliament president, Carme Forcadell, was found guilty of sedition and sentenced to 11.5 years. As for the 2 pro-independent civil society leaders, Jordi Sanchez and Jordi Cuixart, they were found guilty of sedition and condemned to 9 years in prison each. Spain's then acting Prime Minister Pedro Sanchez wrote in an article published by Project Syndicate that no state would ever allow the unilateral secession of a territory that forms part of its constitutional order. To safeguard national security, Western countries also implement strict law enforcement with espionage cases. In 1917, the U.S. enacted the Espionage Act to combat collaborationism. It stipulated that individuals who obtain, receive, and spread national security information without authorization will face heavy penalties. After the 9/11 attacks in 2001, Ana Belén Montes, a former American senior analyst at the Defense Intelligence Agency in the U.S., was sentenced to 25 years in prison for the crime of espionage. The PRISM program, a code name for a large U.S. surveillance program, disclosed by Edward Snowden, a former Central Intelligence Agency employee, is another well-known case. On June 14, 2013, the U.S. federal prosecutors filed a criminal complaint against him, charging him with 3 felonies: theft of government property, disclosure of national security information without authorization, and intentionally disclosing classified communications intelligence information to unauthorized personnel. The latter 2 charges were based on the Espionage Act, while each of the 3 charges carries a maximum sentence of 10 years in prison. 3 years after the phone of Angela Merkel was bugged, Germany expanded the permission for its Federal Intelligence Service to monitor foreigners' telecom and online communication in other countries. To protect the country from the risks of terrorism, laws in Western countries often give the country's law enforcement officials more rights other than monitoring developing situations and complete supervisory control. On September 21 and 22, 2009, which are also European Heritage Days, the Paris police predicted that tourists, yellow vests, and pension protesters would be mixed on the city's streets. Given that some posts on social media incited violence, as the gathering could raise the risk of terrorism, the Paris police applied the strengthening internal security and the fight against terrorism law on a demonstration for the first time. They mobilized 7,500 law enforcement personnel and set up alternate zones, strictly limiting the area of the marchers' activities. Looking back at the Hong Kong protests in 2019, violence, secession, and collaborationism, behaviors often associated closely with terrorism, could be seen on the city's streets. It's lawful and just for China, like any other sovereign nation in the world, to safeguard the stability of Hong Kong through national security laws.